Composition 101. First, you're going to do the L composition.
Okay, L.
The S,
Okay,
triangle.
Triangle.
The steel yard.
Steel,
Where you're going to put a big one and a smaller one on the side there.
Okay.
And then you're going to do the golden spiral. You're going to cut that into equal thirds. Put that in. Use quadratic equation. Y equals mx plus b. Use a sine curve. And then there you go. Then you got a good composition there.
Oh wow, that actually worked.
Hope you enjoyed this tutorial today, guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Composition. Hi, my name is Jake, and today we're going to be talking about composition. Over the past week, I have learned and practiced the rules of composition so that I can convey my stories in the most visually appealing way possible. I made 8 different drawings using 8 different types of composition. I'm going to sit down, go through it, critique it, but please just tear me a new one. Go in those comments. Tell me what I did wrong. Tell me what I did right. I also quickly, right before the reviews, want to just go through a list of some of the stuff that I found when I was researching, so you just have some basic facts of what I was going off of when I went into making these compositions. Please note, this is not a tutorial. I am not a qualified, experienced artist. I'm just learning this. All right, quick little research dump. Of course, I looked up a bunch of tutorials online. This guy's tutorial was pretty good. I'll leave this in the description. Very straight to the point, how you can apply some of the various composition techniques. And I actually got a lot of information off of this website called ArtWad. I wrote some very clean notes that you can look through here. So let's just speed run what I learned. Obviously, we got the rule of thirds. You divide your shot into thirds in both directions, and your subject or focal point should lie on one of these intersection points. We got the steel yard, S curve, pyramid, cross, radiating lines, L shape, diagonal or Dutch angle, and circular compositions. All these use lines and visual weight to draw viewers' attention to a focal point. And these 8 techniques that I just listed also happen to be the 8 compositions that I also made. So we'll be reviewing each of those in greater depth in a second. Contrast of shapes. You can essentially make a focal point by using a different kind of shape or line than what the majority of the shot is. We got the 1/3 to 2/3 real estate rule. You should be able to boil your shot down into one group takes up 1/3 of the drawing and the other group takes up 2/3. This just gives proper weight, simplicity, and ease of looking at it. Value contrast. Your focal point's going to be at the highest contrast of value in the shot. And lastly, detail contrast. Focal point should have the most detail. There's a few other notes I took, and there's plenty of other techniques that are not listed here. These are just kind of the main points that I gathered and practiced and studied. Okay, let's get into me here. This is ridiculous. Okay, what is up, gamers? Let's go through my compositions here. So we got cross composition, diagonal composition, L composition, O or circle composition, radiating lines, S composition, steel yard, triangle. You notice 2 of these I've fully completed, this one and this one, but the rest are essentially storyboards for this character I've been thinking about. So these are just potential scenes that I was thinking of. So let's just frickin' get into it with the cross composition. This was my original rough sketch. How I started all of these was by putting the basic composition down. In terms of it being a cross composition, I got that right because we have essentially the landscape going across, and then we have our character hiding against this tree. So what is wrong about this? First of all, a lot of these I didn't include shading, which I should have. It would be cool if, the light was maybe coming from behind and there was some shadows coming off these trees or something like that. I think it is missing something. Probably just some background work here. Something like that. Probably adding in some more trees, keeping it balanced, but just filling out the scene more could help bring this to life. And I think there would be a character in this scene, looking for him. That's a really good drawing. Or maybe even putting his head looking out. But overall, it does what it needs to. Diagonal composition. This was the original sketch with the composition line. Pretty self-explanatory. Pretty easy. Let's go back to this and see what would be better about it. Again, coming down to that detail contrast, we'll want to keep most of the details along this path. So really just lightly filling out whatever, if it's grass or there's something along the water. You can see as I add in these lines, the drawing actually gets more messy. So we'd want to chill on that. And I think that could get pretty interesting to see what we could do with some shading. But again, I think this works pretty good. I hope the perspective is right. L composition. This is one of the ones that I finished. I like to make it duplicate and just do some color correction. So that's the difference. We got the sketch. Yeah, this is super rough. So this doesn't follow under the rule of thirds, which is fine. They don't always have to. But this one does, and this one does as well. And I think we achieved that basic L composition. Adding in the shadows here filled in almost an empty space. So that's like kind of the power of working with your values. And what I tried to do was value contrast, but it doesn't work that well. I think this is where you kind of lose immediate attention towards our actual subject here, which I wanted to be the main focal point. And honestly, I think this becomes more of the focal point because look how much contrast is between the dark wood and the sky. He lives in a hollowed out tree trunk. I'm just gonna, just so you know what's going on here. So this ends up becoming more of what you might pay attention to rather than this guy. I think that's where it falls short the most. So that might be just making him darker because he probably would be darker with all these shadows here and making this lighter. That would make it a lot better. And maybe even make the opening a little lower so that more of his body is in the sky here. I think that would go a long way. O composition, circle composition. This was the original sketch. This is the top view of the tree trunk. This was the one that I really focused on values the most. It was like this, but in the middle, and then I started adding shading. Does this work? I think for starters, if this was to be an actual storyboard, there has to be some kind of detail here. It feels weird, but maybe it doesn't. Is there something wrong with this? I think it works, but I think there's something I'm not getting. So please help me in the comments. Radiating lines, essentially your focal point, and then all these lines going towards it. Everything is pointing towards your focal point. It's impossible not to pay attention to your focal point. So, did we do this correctly? Is this good? I think the perspective is probably wrong. Let's just pretend like the perspective works for this. We've got these clouds pointing towards him. We've got the street pointing towards him. Everything's pointing towards him. This guy's looking at him. I think the main point, I was trying to be cool. You know how professional storyboards are all shaded in? I was trying to do that on all these. I'm not even lying. Some of the time I was just doing it so it could have cool colors. And that was actually the downfall of this. This coloring here, he totally blends in. So the values are probably the worst part of this. I think the values are good for this because of the light sky and the wall that he's spray painting on, but he doesn't stand out very much. And it blends into the rest of this. That's my problem. I like him in the foreground. I think that works. He balances out the whole drawing well. Would it work if we had light coming in, like it was lighter around here, and so like this was the darkest point, so we don't even need the white. Let's redo that. Is that better to focus on this? I don't know. Please leave in the comments how we could change the values of this to emphasize this being the thing that you're staring at. Here's the S composition. I like this one. Start with that, fill that in. This is our focal point. I added the most detail on the flowers and everything, and I left this like very plain around it. And then we just have our character. He doesn't take all the spotlight. This S is still the focus, which I think is pretty effective in this, is that this can be the focus, and then you go, oh, okay. And then you also might avert your attention because the biggest contrast in color is the moon, or this could be the sun. This could be daytime. I just used darker blue colors. The contrast here, and you could even have this hill be a little lower and him be in that sun or moon even more. And we have our horizon line up here. I think for the most part, you're supposed to have it here or here, never in the middle of the screen. But obviously, there are no rules, baby. You can do whatever the frick you want. Your horizon line can be this. It would probably be sick. Obviously, I didn't fill in any shading, which is a problem. We have the sun or moon here, so we'd have a little shade in there coming off the trees. But I think this works. I think this works. So that's the S composition. Time for the steel yard. So in this scene, he's going to grab a can of spray paint. He's doing some graffiti, as we saw in the radiating lines composition. So this is the composition. Essentially, what you want to do for this, you've got a scale here, and it can still be balanced if the bigger thing is closer towards the middle of the scale, and the smaller thing is closer to the end of it, and then it's balanced. So this was the sketch. I like this shot. It's coming from like inside the cabinet. I think that's cool. I know the perspective is off with his hand coming out, but let's just pretend like this works because I do like how the shot is set up. We got our big boy object here. There's a lot of weight around here, but it's completely offset by all this going on over here. There's a bit of diagonal work going here. You might follow this diagonal. And of course, there's some rule of thirds going on. You know how it do. We haven't talked about this this yet. Shape contrast. I think he's got some great shape contrast. This is a box, essentially, going on right here with some straight lines here and having this curved fellow right here. I think that adds some great contrast. In terms of what we could do better, the perspective, obviously. Like, that's the worst part of this, but overall, pretty solid. Okay, start with the triangle, or you can call it pyramid composition. I don't care. It's pretty easy to get like a good profile, the head and shoulders kind of rounding out to make a triangle. This works in terms of a pyramid or triangle composition. What I don't like, it's just uninteresting. Of course, he's kind of the focal point because it's just a big ass dude. It's kind of hard to avoid. You look at it and it's just like nothing is striking you. There's no like clear focal point, but let's try to figure this out. This is the shading that I added. I kind of actually like it better without the shading. This might be better if he was just outside. It feels like annoying. I'm getting annoyed watching this. The values are uninteresting. They're all like the same. And I think that's where it falls flat. I think the triangle composition is like the only thing we got right in this. With that being said, that is all of my compositions. Started with the cross composition, talked about some more interesting details, fill stuff out, add some shading. Diagonal composition. This one was pretty good, honestly. I like this one. But again, maybe it fucking sucks and you guys can rip it to shreds. This one we talked about, you know, the problems with value and contrast. This one, I don't know. I like this one, but it feels like I'm missing something. With the radiating lines, we have problems with the values coming into this because it blends in with this whole part. That's composition. Pretty good. Just need to add some shading, but it checks out. Steel yard. I broke perspective rules in order to just satisfy the steel yard composition, which is a big problem. Other than that, it's solid. Finally, this is my least favorite one. Triangle composition, which we did. We got the triangle, but that is it. The values are boring. I don't like this one. So that is that. Let's go back to Jake on the couch for some closing messages. Boy, that was a lot of fun, huh? We covered the basic rules of composition and got to critique my attempts at practicing them. I think by practicing this stuff, you can become so much more of an effective artist because going into each project that you do, you just have so much more possibilities on unique compositions. However, it's very important to note, there are no rules in art. That's the number one rule. There are no rules. That's why art is sick. Don't let the rules of composition weigh you down. They're simply just tips that we have found that work, but they're not what you have to do. Also, by learning the rules of composition, you can intentionally break them to give a sense of dissonance or discomfort or confusion, you know, any of that kind of stuff. Also, in general, you'll probably end up applying at least one rule of composition, whether you're consciously doing it or not. All right, that's all I got. That's all I'm saying. I'm looking forward to seeing what else you can kind of pick apart about my compositions in the comments. Appreciate you guys watching this. I hope this was helpful to just get some basics. So, yeah, I'm all done. Thanks for watching.